Welcome to the St. Peter's Vestry meeting, and there is a list going around of present and apologies. Please sign it, and if you know of someone who specifically sent apologies, put their name on. Those who didn't send apologies are actually just absent rather than having sent apologies, so let's just only put the names of those who asked to please send apologies. I'm going to just put in a few short words which I think are very important before we proceed to the vestry part of this service. And I'm just going to pick up a few thoughts that have come up in recent weeks in our readings. And you'll see I'm not reading the gospel passage, but I'm just referring to it. Because the gospel passages in recent weeks have all been dealing with parts of the Sermon on the Mount, which began with the Beatitudes. And because of the vestry, and to save time, I didn't read today's gospel, but I'm referencing it. Today's particular passage, if we'd read it, actually deals with topics like murder, divorce, adultery, which is a continuation of the whole Sermon on the Mount, in which Jesus challenges his listeners to take up an alternative lifestyle. Alternative to what? Alternative to the world, mainly to blind, traditional, nominal, going along with everything, instead of really standing up for what Christians believe in, standing up for the way things should be, the way life should be. Throughout the whole Sermon on the Mount, Jesus uses sets of opposites to make his point. He says, "You've heard it said, such and such, but I say unto you," and he says something that almost sounds like the opposite. But he's really saying, go higher, be better, lift the standard, because what's required of you, disciples of Jesus, is more than what is required of those who do not have a relationship with Christ. In fact, he says you need to go so high that it's actually impossible for most human beings to achieve. You know, the example of you think you haven't murdered anybody, but if you're just angry enough to think murderous thoughts, you've committed murder. That's one of the examples he gives. And we can't achieve that. And so the Pharisees do say to Jesus, "But Lord, who can achieve this?" And he says it's actually not possible for humans to achieve, unless it is done by the power of the Holy Spirit and in the faith that Christ has made up for all our shortfallings on the cross. Christ has made up for those things where we go astray. We should just not think of ourselves as sinless. We should not think of ourselves as having achieved the standard set before us. But Jesus makes up where we fail. I like to think of the Beatitudes as the be attitudes. These are what your attitudes should be like, says Jesus. Be humble, be meek, be pure, be peacemakers, because yours is the kingdom of heaven. And so in the New Testament passage which Nkwazi read for us this morning, Paul has to reprimand the Corinthian church for not rising to that standard, for being quarrelsome and divisive and forming factions. And he says, "Brothers and sisters, I could not address you as people who live by the Spirit, but as people who are still worldly, mere infants in Christ. You are still worldly," he says. "For since there is jealousy and quarreling among you, are you not worldly? Are you not acting like mere humans?" 1 Corinthians 3, 1-3. Now there was a particular context to that passage, and thankfully we are not dealing with any such issues in our own parish at the moment. They happen now and then. But as we go into our vestry today, I want to highlight the fact, we've said it a few times, and I want to highlight the fact that the council that we elect today is going to have to steer the parish through an interregnum, hopefully not too long, after my retirement at the end of May. And it will be vitally important for everyone to work together, that there doesn't become any issue for divisiveness or quarreling under your leaders, that you support your leaders and work together as a team, as you always have. I've known St. Peter's to be like that. It would have been good if a few more people could have been present today, which is why we're recording this sermon, and also if a few more people could have offered to serve on the council, apart from the wardens and the treasurer, because we need a number of people with their input and their intellect and their thinking and their caring to take the parish through that time. Apart from that, we always need flower arrangers, readers, prayers, Sunday school teachers. And maybe I just have to say this here. Is there anybody here without a ministry? Don't answer me. It's a rhetorical question. The reluctance of people to fill positions in the church is not a good sign. Fear of commitment can paralyze a parish, as can criticism without action, or complacency. You know, it's someone else's problem, someone else's job, someone else's responsibility. According to the rules of the diocese, we won't be able to take any more names here this morning for council from the floor, and we'll have a look at those in a moment. But if someone feels after today's vestry, even someone on the virtual platform when they see this later on, that God may be convicting you to serve on the council in order to make our numbers just a little bigger, then you may speak to me, because the rules do allow us to co-opt additional people onto council after vestry for good reason. However it turns out, however it pans out, whoever ends up being on the council, let us together behave like a mature community, a team, supportive of one another, obedient to the leading of the Spirit. Because the leading of the Spirit is going to play a huge role in whoever will follow me later this year, or next year, depending on how long it takes. We need to pray. Instead of worrying and stamping our feet, we must pray that God will show us the right person. And pray for Luke, because he's the one who places someone here ultimately. In our collect this morning, which most of you have forgotten by now, we prayed, grant us grace in the face of many temptations to seek the mind of Christ. And that's my plea. As we go into the vestry, as we go on with this year, let us keep in mind, in the back of our minds at all times, that we are seeking the mind of Christ. In finding a new rector, in leading our council through the time of when there is no rector, and whoever it is that God places his hand on, my plea is that we will accept and support that person, regardless of their background, their language, their color, their race, their gender. Because those are the things that sometimes become stumbling blocks to us getting the very person that God has in mind. So I'm setting the tone of the vestry with this input, because it's very much what the vestry is going to focus on in terms of how we go forward this year. Electing a council is not just Soma putting a committee together. They are here to do a very particular purpose, and this year more so than in other years. And so with that, I declare this vestry open. So if we could just bring the table up. And the main business of today is to hear the chapel warden's report. I've already put my input in ahead of time, but I might comment after the report. So with that, I'm going to ask Shirley, is it? Are you going to do it? Roy's going to do it. Roy, would you please come forward and present the chapel warden's report?
The Honourable Rector, brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, it affords me great pleasure to present this report to you. This report covers the period March 2022 to February 2023. The last year has seen service return to a semblance of what used to be before COVID. At the start of the year, the Eucharist was served with only a wafer due to health reasons. We have, however, also started using small cups again. Worship was only by overhead projector. Musicians have now moved back into their role in a mix of YouTube and live music is offered. This necessitates the replacement of the bulb in the overhead projector, thanks to the donor who so generously gave. Bible study groups have increased. A few St. Peter members attended the battle plan of prayer and was taken back to some of the home groups. Attendance is slowly increasing, but we are still far off from the pre-COVID levels. After the devastating floods in KZN, flood relief drive was held with all contributions sent to Natal. A new teacher was employed to replace Paula Freitas. This is Elise Knight to teach at Unicorn. St. Peter's hosted a successful youth day in June. In September, a successful mission weekend, Hope for the Future, was held. Many went away encouraged and better equipped for the future. This was especially meaningful in the light of Gail's retirement and the uncertainty regarding the new rector. With regards to the new rector, there have been many questions asked about the process of choosing the new rector. Gail has undertaken to post a short video explaining the process. The board held confirmation and preparation for the youth, and the confirmation took place in December. We said a sad farewell to the Marisa family who left after many years at St. Peter's. The tender was a current councillor, a council member, and at the time of his transfer. On the financial side, Elise Knight took over from Gail Backman from the 1st of January. We thank Gail for her many years of dedication and commitment to the balancing of our books, a job that required more than a call to duty. St. Peter's garden trees have been pruned and cut on a regular basis, especially around the perimeter of the electric fence. The admin offices are still being rented out and thus bringing in much needed revenue to the poor financial state of St. Peter's. The Borghaus tenure as curate came to an end in December. She brought many changes to the parish, especially with her technological mind and experience. She has been appointed director in Ballabora, and we wish her all the very best for the future. Repairs were done to the bottom house, the cottage, the flat, and the rectory. All the buildings are getting old, and this is an ongoing project. Frogfoot, who hired the land behind the admin block, required more space to install a generator, which we granted. A monthly rent is paid to the diocese, of which 70% is put into St. Peter's trust account, earning interest. From time to time, money has been withdrawn to pay for repairs to buildings. Frogfoot operates completely independent of St. Peter's. COVID has put tremendous financial strain on all the chapelries and parish as a whole. Having said that, we ended the financial year with a small profit. We give thanks to all those people who were faithful in their tithing. May the Lord truly bless you all for this. A vote of thanks to the councillors and wardens who served St. Peter during the last year. To all the people involved in the ministry in our church, such as flowers, gardens, tea ladies, sacristans, prayer ministry, data projectors, sound desk, Wendy and Gail Backman in the office, thank you. Once again, we stress the importance of all ministries in our church, even if it is just prayer for the church and its family. One ministry is as important as another. And lastly, a big thank you to Gail, to Paul, and Ron for being there for all of us during these trying times. God bless you all. Thank you.
After Roy's report, we lost a bit of video. Apologies for that. But during this time, Gail Backman gave us a very quick overview of the figures. We didn't go into any details. She just summarized everything by saying that we've come out not in the red, we've come out in the black, but that we really could do better. And so that's where we take over now again.
We're not making progress. We're just hanging in there. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Gail. It's just for you to know that, things could be better, but we're not yet at the point of liquidation. We thank God for that. And I thank God, as Gail does, for those who tithe, because they're the ones who keep us going. If you're not tithing, I want to challenge you to start tithing for two reasons. Not just because the parish could do with the money and because it actually belongs to God, but because you will see blessing in your life. You will see blessing when you trust God. And so when we give God our leftovers, we don't really put our faith on the line, and so we can't really experience the blessing. But when you put your faith on the line and you say, Lord, I'm giving my tithe, a tenth of what I earn, you'll see what God comes up with. It's amazing. So that's a bit of testimony. I've always seen it in my own life, and I know others here who have as well. But as Gail always says, if only everybody tithed, we'd have no financial issues in the parish at all. That's not overlooking the fact that some people are in a very bad space right now financially. We do understand that. Some people lost their jobs or lost income during the pandemic and they haven't recovered, and we know that it's a reflection of the state of the whole economy in our country. So keep praying for our parish and let God steer you and be obedient to Him, and you'll see what He does. But thank you, Gail. Gail mentioned the upgrading of the new pastel system. That's the particular program we use to do our bookkeeping. And it's an old one that we've been using for many years, so now there's a new one coming. But with that, I also want to, Roy's mentioned it, I want to thank Gail for all her years of faithful service. It really has been very good working alongside her. I can't tell you how much confusion it caused the bank to have a Gail Backman and a Gail Blunden. They're both Gails and they're both GB. And so every now and then there would be confusion from people outside the parish, because they'd say, but we sent it to Gail Blunden. No, it was meant to go to Gail Backman. The diocese had made the same mistake. But it's been lovely working with another Gail. So thank you, Gail, for all your years of service. I know that this parish has done extremely well with your careful eye on books. I also want to add, there was a suggestion made, a silly point. I think somebody was just thinking out loud and said, there's a culture of stealing at St. Peter's. Bad thing to say. No, there's no stealing at St. Peter's. There's always an odd person that could take something when you leave your handbag lying around or your cell phone. We can't catch the person. And if we do, there'll be trouble. But there's no culture of stealing here. And our bookkeepers, our secretary, and those who handle the money, our science people, are very, very honest. I would trust them with my life savings. And I mean that with all my heart. So just know that. But always be careful. You never know. You know, when you come here, don't leave your handbag and your cell phone lying around. You just never know who might nick it. It might not be one of us, might be an outsider, might be one of our staff, we don't know. Just be careful. But that does not make us a culture of stealing. With that, I also want to welcome then Elise, our new treasurer. Elise, why don't you just come up for a minute, please? I think you all know Elise by now. There's nothing strange about Elise. She now lives on the premises as well. She's living in the flat where Boho lived. And just want to say welcome to you as our new treasurer. Would you like to just say a sentence about how you feel about being the new treasurer?
Thank you everybody for putting the trust in me. I'll do my best. I'll try to follow Carol's footsteps. Thank you everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Elise. Elise is familiar with the software and all that, and Gail's been sort of teaching her. She's been shadowing Gail for some time. Now she's taking over, and Gail will shadow her and keep an eye for a while until Elise is confident and on her feet with the books. So that deals with the administration and the finances. And that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the real purpose of today's vestry, and that is the elections. Item number 4. Now, I think we are going to display. There we go. Go back to that one. This is a record of attendances throughout the year. We are required to show this to the vestry. These were the people who were elected last year. Okay, some are there almost automatically. Myself, Teboho, and Gail Backman. We were there ex officio. And most of us were present all the time except Teboho when she was on maternity leave. And then the wardens were Johan and Shirley, and Roy was the alternate of St. Peter's. And there you can see they are present most of the time. If there's a yellow A, that means they had sent apologies. And some of those I want to tell you is because we've started having nearly all our meetings on Zoom. We have our meetings mostly on a Tuesday night on Zoom. And every now and then there's connectivity problems. And I know Roy had a few times where he really struggled to connect. And of course load shedding doesn't help. So some of those apologies are very good reason apologies, because they just couldn't connect. If it shows a red A, which you can hardly see, it just looks like a gap missing, it means they were either just, it means they left. Just go back. Just go back. There we go. It means they left, and that was to tender. To tender, Marisa left halfway through the year. They moved to Johannesburg. It was a great loss to us. We enjoyed having to tender on the council. And there are no green A's, green X's that I can see. That's usually people who didn't apologize, just didn't show up. That didn't happen this year. So thank you. Thank you to the council for all your efforts and for making taking the time and trouble to attend every meeting on Zoom. Let's go to the next screen. Okay, now we come to the nominations of wardens and chapelry councillors for this year. Now, myself and Elise are automatically there, and we have 4 names: Johan, Roy, Shirley, and Frank. 3 of those have to become wardens, and 1 is a councillor. And that's why I was saying earlier that it would be really nice if we could get 1 or 2 more councillors, because once 3 of those are wardens, we're almost top heavy. You've got clergy and wardens and 1 councillor. Can we not have 1 or 2 more people who could say, I will serve the Lord. I will give up 1 Tuesday evening a month to be on a Zoom council meeting and to put my input in. It is very sad to me that people are so reluctant to serve in this way. And for those who are on, for those who have served for many years, I think you will agree with me, it's quite interesting to see how your church runs. It's an interesting thing to see how the machine works that runs a parish, and to have a say, to put your input in. Those are not difficult meetings. Sometimes we do have to make difficult decisions, and that's why we need each other. So if after this meeting there's anybody either physically here or who's watching virtually who feels they would like to offer themselves, please come and speak to me, and we will co-opt you onto the council. So, with that, I need to ask for nominations or proposals for warden. The current wardens are Johan, Roy and Shirley. One of you is an alternate. Who's the alternate? Is it Roy? Roy's the alternate. So Shirley and Johan are the current wardens of the outgoing council. They are willing to stand again. And we've spoken with them privately about all the things I mentioned before the time, about the interregnum and the time that's coming up. So they are willing to stand again. But Frank is also available to be nominated as a warden if necessary, if you feel you like him, and then we vote. So may I ask for proposals for wardens? Anybody like to propose? There's two ways to do this. One is we propose that we accept the same wardens as they were last year, and that we accept Frank as a councillor en bloc with one vote. The other way to do it is to nominate or suggest who should be wardens, and then the remaining person becomes the other councillor. Who would like option one? Option one, a few hands going up. Put them right up so I can see. Who would like option two? Nobody's going for option two. Okay. So that makes it very easy. That means that we re-accept our three wardens, Shirley, Johan, and Roy as alternate. And we thank Frank for being willing to be the other councillor. And thanks to technology and all the bad things we said about the pandemic, they've taught us some new things. Frank does not have to travel into town on a Tuesday night, all the way from Ofkalaka to a meeting. He can connect with us via Zoom. And that's how we have our meetings. Once in a while, we'll have a physical meeting after church or something, but it's very seldom that we do that. So, thank you to those people. I won't ask for further nominations now because I'm not allowed to according to the rules. I have been begging people, and Wendy's been phoning people to get further nominations before today, but we've been very unsuccessful. So please, everybody present and watching virtually, please pray and ask if God is not calling you just to offer in, to be on the council and to offer, to be available to offer your bit of advice and opinion. The real sad part is we get armchair members, the ones who sit at home and criticize and say what the council ought to do and what the church should be doing, but they're not prepared to be on these committees. We don't want those. We want you to be on the committee, or we want you to be praying for the things that don't go right instead of criticizing. So, thank you very much to the councillors outgoing and back in again. and welcome aboard, Frank. Shall we give him a hand? Please note that our next St. Peter's Council meeting is on the 28th of March. So it's a good more than a month away. Got time to think about it. It'll be via Zoom. And before that date, on the 14th of March, also via Zoom, will be the Parish Easter Vestry meeting, where we will elect parish wardens. And just to remind you of how it works, the parish Vestry is made up of all the councillors that are elected at all the chapelries, only the councillors. So every one of you who's elected today, and each one in the other chapelries who's elected, makes the parish Easter Vestry. Then at that vestry we elect parish wardens. And from there on, the parish council, as opposed to vestry, is made up of all the wardens of all the chapelries, not all the councillors. All the wardens of all the chapelries become the parish councillors, and the three wardens that get elected at the vestry. So,
Further than that, the councillors only serve on their chapelry council for the rest of the year, unless a parish vestry is held for any reason. Just a comment about that came through in the report, that I said I would put together a video or something to explain how the process works of electing a new rector. Subsequent to that meeting, I had a word with Luke, who agreed to write a letter, and he's done that. He's written a letter to the wardens, and that letter we will read in church maybe in the next week or two, just so that you know. Always send it out, something like that, to tell you how the process works of getting a new rector. But be assured that he is looking. I've been looking, several of us have been looking. It's the bishop's prerogative to place a new rector in the parish once the old rector has retired. And he's open to suggestions, quietly and unofficially, because once a name is identified, the bishop has to ask permission from the other person's bishop, if it's someone from another diocese. Has to ask permission from their bishop to offer them the position. We are not aware of anyone in our own diocese who seems to be the right person to come here. So we are looking further afield. Just be aware of that. But please take the matter to prayer. It's the most important thing we can do. With that, I would like us to go into a time of prayer. Let us pray.